welcome to another episode of AP Taylor Swift, the podcast for Swifties who like to dive a layer deeper into the music. So lean in close, turn up your volume, because class is in session. We're your hosts. I'm Monsi.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jody.
And we are your unofficial professors of Taylor Swift.
Hello and welcome to another episode of AP Taylor Swift. Today, you are joining us for a deep dive episode. We are going to be deep diving the much requested fan favorite song 7. We have had several people reach out to us asking for a deep dive for the song. And so we were all really excited when Jen brought this song up in last week's conversation. It is a continuation of that. So if you have not listened to last week's episode, it was a show and tell where we were discussing double meaning and 7. We'll get into it, but the title and the line that it shows up in the song was the point of discussion. Before we get into it, I also want to make a plug for our new after school content. This is our season 3. We are calling ourselves junior year students for the time being. I don't know if that branding will stick. But
hey, we got our masters, we got a PhD, we got years we can pull out of this.
We have a long to go. Learning never ends.
Somebody did recently ask me, so are you guys still going? Did you run out of songs yet? And I was like, we have enough songs for 10 years of this podcast, and that's
we
might
run out
albums.
We might run out of literary things,
I don't think so.
Topics.
No, we will just come up with. We'll do. There's and we have Harry Potter books.
We have 20. We've been we should do a part 2 of this. There's other songs we want to discuss.
No, we're gonna have to. We're never gonna run out of topics.
No,
but
and she's pumping out more songs all the time too. I think the 10 years math I did was before TTPD, so
that added 7 more years.
Yeah,
plenty of content to come, and all of it will remain free. You'll still have access to our free content, but if you do want something a little extra, we have launched an after-school program in true extension of our nerdy brand. And what the after school program offers
is free childcare and snacks.
Yeah, that's what I wish it offered. But it actually offers extra deeper discussion. It could be into a number of things. The first few episodes that we kicked off have to do with just doing even more discussion on some of the literary aspects of some of our topics, but it can really vary. We can pick additional topics that we want to discuss, and you get to hear us talk some more.
And as an after school paid subscriber, you can also help influence the topics that we do on this podcast or the deep dive songs that we cover. So as we mentioned, this deep dive of 7 was a request from some of our listeners, and our paid subscribers, now that we have after school, will be the ones that get to help influence our show and tell topics and potentially these deep dive songs. So you can subscribe to after school at aptaylorswift.substack.com/subscribe.
Yeah, we're never going to run out of topics because we're crowdsourcing them now.
7 is track 7 on Folklore, and it's written by Dessner. How do we do a deep dive?
Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift.
Oh, sorry.
That's
yes.
an important.
Oh my gosh.
You're that's a given.
That's true.
Duh.
It is a given.
Is it actually written by him? I'm his name is as producer. Maybe it's just Taylor Swift.
I saw it as both of them.
Songwriters, Dessner.
Sorry, let's try that again. 7.
I don't know. I liked the first take.
7 is track 7 on Folklore, and it's written by Taylor Swift and Dessner. How do we do a deep dive, Jen?
So tempted to take the editing for this one and keep the first version of that conversation in there. Still recover. Okay. Yeah, for our deep dives, we do what we call the rhetorical triangle. So we look at who's the speaker, who's the audience, and what's the purpose. And then at the end, we come back and we each say what we think the purpose of the song is now that we have discussed it. I have been saying this more lately, but particularly for this song, since this was the song I chose last week's episode, I've sat with it a little bit longer. The you is a really interesting question to me. If it stays the same, if it changes, who it is, I don't know. And I think it will be an illuminating conversation to have. So we can get into it. I'm just throwing it out there. That's my biggest question as we are starting this conversation.
Who is the song to? Who is it about? And when is it about, maybe?
Last week, we talked about the title 7 and how it and the potential double meaning of the title. I always assumed it alludes to the age of the speaker that this is of someone 7 years old or a memory of being 7 years old. But I feel like we need to get into the lyrics to see if that's correct.
Yeah. Could also be the Horcruxes. We don't know.
Correct. We know she's collecting Horcruxes. All right.
Well, the you is interesting to me because we immediately start off with an implied you. Please picture me in the trees.
Okay. So I am. We're in the tree. You are in the trees.
Done.
Speaker is in the trees. The eye is in the trees. Damn it. This is
Right.
going to be fun.
So,
The eye is in the trees. This
so
is not a song we should deep dive at a night recording, guys.
But immediately there's this implied you. It's saying, hey, you, please picture me in the trees. So who does she want picturing her? I don't think we know yet. I'm just saying that's a really interesting question as we go on.
Sure. Call to action right from the start.
Yes. To perhaps a singular you, perhaps a group you. Hey, fans, picture me in the trees. Done, like Jody said.
Right.
We gotcha. Or is this a specific person?
And then we get to the line that we talked about last week as the double meaning. Now, in my lyrics, it's I hit my peak at 7, new line, feet in the swing over the creek.
Yeah, and in different versions of the lyrics, it's I hit my peak at 7 feet in the swing over the creek. And she does sing it with a pause after 7. So is she hitting, we're repeating a little bit of last week briefly, but did she hit her peak as in her physical height peak at 7 feet while she was swinging? Or did she hit her peak as in her life peak? I peaked at a certain age at age 7.
Can you imagine peaking at age 7? I always say I peaked in high school, and I think
No,
that's pathetic.
Yeah.
I peaked in 8th grade, so.
I think I peaked in 10th grade.
That's why we do a
The year I
podcast.
met my husband.
That is exactly why we do a podcast tied to us being in high school, because the three of us think we peaked around high school. That explains so much.
I haven't found a new therapist since
Well, just
moving.
Give them the podcast.
I feel like this is reminding me that I should do that. Anyway.
I think you should just give your therapist the podcast, pick your favorite episodes that you think reveal the most about you, and be like, here's your homework before we meet. This is everything you need to know.
I feel like this should be an AI prompt.
Oh, God.
Does anyone have the album, out of curiosity, where we might have the official lyric?
No.
Think
I know somebody who does, though, if you'd like me to text them.
No, I was just
we
curious.
could see if there's any screenshots of them.
I was curious. Feels like it might be helpful as evidence to submit into the discussion. Yeah, I hit my peak at 7 feet in the swing. One counter argument is that 7 feet in a swing.
I mean, I would think that you could probably swing up to 7 feet.
I guess, like, what would that tell about this person? I think what that's telling us is that this person was really proud of an accomplishment. It still speaks child to me, early childhood. But yeah, it does feel like more of an achievement rather than life peak, which is very ambiguous, because why would you hit your peak at 7?
Well, and I
Is it
think
peak happiness? Like, peak what?
Could be peak. Yeah, I don't think it means like peak as a human and like everything went downhill from there. But I think there's like peak happiness, peak memories, especially when you think about childhood. Maybe you think of being 7 and this is the pick, right? When picture me in the trees, this is peak childhood memories
I kinda
for
like
this
that.
person with
Yeah.
my feet in the swing over the creek.
And I don't think we've done this before, but we can keep discussing it. But I also think once we get to the end of the song, we should come back and discuss the first verse again, because I think a lot more context is going to come and we really don't know much here.
The idea of being 7 feet high does have wings, not to be funny, but because it says I was too scared to jump in, but I was high in the sky.
Yeah.
The next few lines do kind of suggest that the speaker is potentially 7 feet high.
Yeah, but it also could be I was high in the sky of like a euphoria of like I felt, like I was flying. But it is interesting too, because if it's 7 feet high, that's a pretty brave thing to do. If you're going 7 feet as a kid, that's pretty high. You're going to feel that height. Yet I was too scared to jump in. So I think we get, regardless of the interpretation, we get conflict right off the bat as this internal conflict of doing something kind of brave, but I was scared.
Right.
But I was high in the sky with Pennsylvania under me. Are there still beautiful things? So I think we have this story, and then are there still beautiful things is a fascinating question. To me, it evokes nostalgia.
Right.
I have this childhood memory of swinging really high, being scared to jump in, but being in awe of the beauty of the trees and Pennsylvania and all of this nature around me. do those things still exist? Or is it that childhood wonder that made you enjoy it that you can't recapture as an adult? I don't know. When I think feet on a swing, just very specifically for the images, I think specifically of a tire swing.
I think of one of those wooden slat
Tire
swings.
swing.
Okay, hold
Yeah.
on. We have the lyric book. Okay, flag on the play. Feet is its own line.
It's completely its own line. So
Oh,
it could go
yeah.
that to me is doubling down on the ambiguity of feet
Correct.
becoming. Yeah, for sure she wanted that to be that double meaning.
1,000%.
Amazing.
Thank you, Nicole Watson, for helping us, because wow, that was not an option that we thought of.
That we considered.
Yeah.
And that definitely draws even more attention to that line.
Yeah.
Also, enjambment queen over here, Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. Because it's, please picture me in the trees. I hit my peak at 7 feet in the swing over the creek. I was too scared to jump in, but I was high in the sky with Pennsylvania under me. Are there still beautiful things? So she really sings it this way. So like we should really take the way she is singing it to be the way she has written it.
Which is ambiguous. So
let's go to the chorus because we're 13 minutes in as a Swift podcast and we could stay on
It's
this
okay.
first
It always
verse
starts
forever.
off slow and then
It
it will
does.
speed up. That's true.
And as we
Famous
go
last words.
As we go into the chorus, which I can read, I'll just read through the whole chorus, I think. I also just want to keep in mind that we get, are there still beautiful things? Is the question that leads into the chorus, which is, sweet tea in the summer, cross your heart, won't tell no other. And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you. Your braids like a pattern, love you to the moon and to Saturn, passed down like folk songs, the love lasts so long.
Sweet tea in the summer, my recall. I mean, we know we know they're in Pennsylvania, so we had a location. I think Pennsylvania. Is Pennsylvania considered the South?
No, it is very distinctly a middle. What's it called? Middle Midwest? States? No, not Midwest.
It's not. I was like, it's not Midwest, but yeah, it's.
North, I was literally just thinking about this yesterday because I was going through. I was on the train from Boston, and I was like, well, that's God. No, there's the middle colonies, the South, and you had like the.
Yeah, Maryland is considered the South, and Pennsylvania borders Maryland, but I think Maryland is the
Maryland's
last.
Considered the. So I always think of it from the perspective of the Civil War and where states were in the Civil War. Maryland and Delaware were the North.
Well, it's the Mason-Dixon line is what determines it, actually, and Maryland
is it below the Mason-Dixon?
Yeah, Maryland is below, but
Pennsylvania is above.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think what's interesting, this whole song feels more rural Pennsylvania, so not as much on the more western Pennsylvania, which gets more towards like the Midwest, South.
Yeah, it's a huge Amish community too. Right. So there's this like simplicity, the idea of sweet tea in the summer, playing in the creek evokes this very nostalgic, simpler times kind of feeling.
Right. Also, I think even without the title 7 or this back and forth around 7, is it peak at 7 years or 7 feet, the language here tells us this is childhood, right? She's on the swing, sweet tea, cross your heart, won't tell no other.
Yeah, that to me is one of the most this is a kid lines.
Yeah. I actually was considering the song when we did our Peter Pan episode, and I know the kids there's a line in the play maybe, but definitely in the movies, cross your heart and hope to die, which is a common phrase that kids say, which is what this is referencing. And that was one of the connections why I was like, ooh, it could be kind of Peter Pan, because I feel like kids' things always say that because that's such a kid thing to say.
Yeah. Well, and though I can't recall your face is an interesting line because that also implies this was a long time ago.
Right.
And I have childhood friends who I remember them. I remember playing with them. If you were like, what did they look like? I'd be like, a child? I don't know.
Right. You can't quite recall what it looks like, but you know there was something childlike. And you know it was an important face to you then.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the second mention of the you, and since Jen, you said to look out for that, I have to call attention to it. It feels to me like this is a different you that we're talking to than we did in the very beginning, the implied you. Please picture me in the trees as somebody that the speaker is directly addressing in this song. And though I can't recall your face, now it feels like we've shifted a little bit because we're talking to somebody
that we don't remember.
She's clearly not looking at. She doesn't remember what they look like.
Right. And I've still got love for you, even though I can't recall your face.
And what is really interesting to me is you're braids like a pattern. So I can't remember your face, but I know your hair was always in braids. I remember you always had just the coolest braids. So you remember some details, which again, that is such that childhood friend, or even because it's summer, like a vacation friend. I remember making friends on trips or something and being like, I knew you and I were best friends for 5 days, and then I never saw you again.
I have these very vivid childhood memories that are literally just snippets. Like, they're not anything momentous, but they are just these little flashes. And it's funny because I don't know if you feel this way, but I sometimes have trouble distinguishing, is that a memory I had, or is that a story someone told me, or is that a photo or a childhood, like a home video that I saw? But then there are certain memories that I'm like, well, there was no photos of this. Like the example I'll give that I recently shared. I used pacifiers until I was like 5. I was very old, and my mother like couldn't get me to get rid of them. And the only way she got me to get rid of them was she told me that her friend's daughter, Emily, who was like 2 or 3, didn't have any, and I had to send her mine. And so I vividly remember putting my pacifiers, and I had a lot of them, in a Ziploc bag and in a manila envelope, and going down to the mailbox with my mom and putting them in the mailbox. And there's no photo of this, there's no video, but I remember this so clearly. And then I remember my mother telling me that later on that she called Emily's mother to be like, you're gonna get an envelope filled with old used pacifiers, just throw them out.
I feel like when we say core memory, that's
a core memory.
Yeah. It's
Total
like,
core memory. And that's what this song is. This song is core memories. Mine are not about being in a swing.
Yeah. You get flashes and you're like, I can't place it, but I don't have anything else.
There's no photos or videos of this, so I know it's my memory. It's my core memory.
And the thing that she remembers the most, I think, is the love that she had for this person, because it's love you to the moon and to Saturn, passed down like folk songs. The love lasts so long. And I also love, like you were saying, Jody, passed down like folk songs. That's an oral tradition. So it's not video, it's not photographs. It's through this oral tradition and just human memory that I am remembering how much I loved this friend of mine.
I think your braids like a pattern is interesting because that is a visual thing that the person remembers, but it is gender and racially ambiguous. Like, I think it could be girls, it could be a boy, it could be,
we don't know.
Like, it could be, like, I feel like braids is a loaded term because a lot of cultures have significance for braids. Like, that term specifically, it's not just like your hair, you know? And so I think it's just a very vivid detail for such an ambiguous rest of the description. And that's kind of, to me, that also speaks to the childhood memories because that is how those memories come sometimes. Like, some things you remember so clearly, and then some things are more just like a feeling, like love you to the moon and to Saturn, and I still have that love. So I love the way that that's woven together.
It's very impressionistic. Memories are impressionistic. There are some parts that have very vivid detail, and others are not detailed at all. You just get the impression of the thing.
And we know memories can change over time, that memories are not reliable. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. I used this song as a reference in a recent Substack on unreliable narrators, and I talked about the song 7 and the unreliable narrator here to show the example of youthful and childhood narrators are unreliable, not because they're of any malicious intent, but simply because of youthful naivete, or because memory is fallible and unreliable.
Well, the next stanza changes a lot.
Well, it's the bridge, so that would explain things.
But before we get into it, I just want to summarize what we've done. Please picture me in the trees. That section feels a little more generic of saying, hey, here's a distinct memory I have of my childhood being on a swing. What is she thinking? Is she thinking about how high she went? Is she thinking about how that was such a peak nostalgic moment for her childhood? We don't know, but it's more generically about her. And then the next one is about this friend. It's about this other person who we remember that had braids, that we love dearly, but we don't remember their face because it's been a long time. So we have 2 vignettes in some way of these childhood memories, and then things take a turn.
I'm kind of surprised by how quickly we get to the bridge. It's a pretty short song, actually. And the fact that we only have one chorus and then we get into the bridge, I just think is interesting.
Should we just read the whole thing and then unpack? Because it all kind of goes together. Okay, I will read it. And I've been meaning to tell you, I think your house is haunted. Your dad is always mad, and that must be why. And I think you should come live with me, and we can be pirates. Then you won't have to cry or hide in the closet. And just like a folk song, our love will be passed on.
That is sad. I've been meaning to tell you is such an interesting way to phrase an insight or just saying anything, because especially when you think about it in a child's voice, do kids talk that way? It feels like such an adult phrase. It also signals longer term thinking about something. It's not just in the moment. It's like, oh, this has been in my head for a while. I don't know if kids actually talk this way. So here you have a little bit of like the adult putting on the suit of a child and expressing kid feelings, but kind of in an adult way.
Interesting.
I think she's playing with time quite a bit in this song, because if we go back just a little bit, sweet tea in the summer, cross your heart, won't tell no other, present tense. And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you. So that's implying this going back. But then we go down and love you to the moon and to Saturn. So that I think is constant. And then it's been passed down like love songs by like folk songs, the love lasts so long. So it's almost as if she is, as an adult, reflecting so deeply on this childhood experience that she's almost going back and forth in some ways.
Kind of like a dream, when you dream about memories.
Yes, dream is a good way to put it, because I was like, I don't think she's confused, like awake and confused, but she does seem to be mashing up.
Yeah, it's like in
a
a dream when you kind of see yourself in the dream and you're like watching yourself have this experience, but it was a memory. It's a weird, trippy dream, but that's kind of how this feels. And I agree with you, because, and I've been meaning to tell you, feels like we got back together as adults.
Yeah.
And it's been a while. But now everything else, the next line in the bridge is what she thought when she was a child, but it's said from this childlike perspective. I think your house is haunted and your dad is always mad, and that must be why, right? There's such innocence.
And it's present tense.
Yeah.
Right.
Your house is haunted. Your dad is always mad, and that must be why. And so are we in the present today as the adults? Because that's what it sounds like. But clearly this is a memory from childhood. Right. And so it feels like we're in the present in that past.
Yeah, and you're right. I didn't even realize the tense change.
Okay, this is taking a dark turn, but I kind of feel like she's talking to somebody who's passed away.
You would.
I do
but
see
you're
that.
not wrong.
I have a less dark example. This
Thank
is
you.
a real thing that happened to me. I recently had a dream that I traveled back in time and was in my 10-year-old body, but had my adult brain and memories of everything that happened. And so I had the opportunity to like change my fate if I wanted. And it was a very vivid dream, which was fascinating.
That is a wild dream. I feel like you had an opportunity there, Jen. Like there may have been a chance.
What did we change?
Truly, my first thought in my dream, I know why this happened, because football season is starting, which lets you know when this started. But I distinctly remember my dream being like, oh, okay, like what year is it? I can watch the Colts win the Super Bowl and like I can care about it this time. And that's really exciting. And then I started trying to be like, can I get an adult to bet on the Super Bowl for me? Because I can make a ton of money because I know that they're going to win that year.
I'm always so interested and intrigued by other people's dreams.
I have incredibly vivid dreams. It's a whole thing. But,
okay, but now that we know that the multiverse exists, like what if our dreams are just us visiting a different reality?
I absolutely believe that. Except my dream was like about a menu I had to submit for an event that I'm doing, and I still hadn't done it. And I dreamt that we were on the day of the event and I still hadn't given them the menu. And so what did I do when I woke? I literally woke up at 4 a.m. and put an alert in my phone to submit the menu. I want your dreams, Jen.
I also get dreamed that I'm being kidnapped or chased a lot.
Okay, never mind.
Anyways, the reason
you
I
should
say
look
that,
up what that means.
I know I should.
These are very accurate.
Ridiculous example aside, I like the dream metaphor because this particular section could be like waking up in a dream and you're seeing that person. I also like it's hard for me to remember faces in dreams, but like, oh, I saw your braids, so I knew who you were in my dream. And in your dream, you're getting the chance to say, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to tell you. I think something's going on and I think we can do something about this.
I do really like this because I think it plays the back and forth in time and the tense change really well. But I also think it works from a folk song perspective. And we go back to folk stories. Like those are stories that you tell as if they are present tense, even though they happened in the past tense. And that's kind of what we have here.
Well, that's interesting.
Or in the beginning when she says I was high in the sky, she was high.
Yeah.
Also an option.
Double meaning.
Okay, one other option. What if this you is different than all the other yous? Like, now, what if this is somebody that she is telling the story to? Like, what if the past tense is referring to like the actual story and now we are in the present and she just like interludes in the story and she's like, and I've been meaning to tell you, I think your house is haunted.
Too much.
Like,
I'd need to be high
what
to
if she's
actually
talking
understand
to
and
a
follow
kid?
that one.
Like, what if she's talking to a kid now, I guess?
I think she has put herself back in her little kid body as an adult, Jen Dream style, talking to this friend that's like, she's catching up with. I've been meaning to tell you, but it goes back to the childhood experience. We haven't even talked about the meaning of the lines, which is also like devastating.
Yes. Well, and we should definitely get to that. But I think the thing to me that is the most childish, which we can get into the meaning. So I think your house is haunted. Your dad is always mad, and that must be why. So some sort of abuse is probably going on here. I say probably. Some abuse is
Definitely.
going on here. And the childishness and naivete is, I think you should come live with me and we can be pirates. So that this escape fantasy, it's not, as an adult, if you know a child in that scenario, you're thinking of like, how can I be supportive? What can I do? Do I need to call someone? But the child point of view is let's run away and be pirates, which is also, again, very Peter Pan. This would have totally worked for that. Let's go to Never Never Land. Let's just get out of here.
I also think it's really interesting how children recognize very adult situations and how they interpret them. So I think your house is haunted. Your dad is always mad, and that must be why, right?
Yeah.
This child doesn't quite know why the dad is the way he is, but knows that there's bad vibes in this house, right? You just, like, as an outside observer, goes into this house and knows that something is very off and they don't feel safe here. And she wants to protect and save this friend. So she's never blames the dad for his actions. She's blaming the ghosts in the haunted house, but knows that she needs to take this friend away. I think you should come live with me. And we can be pirates. Pirates, yes, are whimsical and fantastical, but they're also strong and they also fight back. And I think they come from a place of strength that clearly this narrator feels they need.
Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately for my own heart, I am liking your death interpretation more and more, Monzi.
Yeah, to me, it feels like she's talking to somebody who's just not there anymore, but she still thinks about.
That she thinks she wanted to wish she could save.
Yeah, there's something also just really sad about that last line. And just like a folk song, our love will be passed on. I was thinking about what the folk songs are about and the heroes that are in the tales and the stories that get passed on. And it's usually, even though sometimes they're kids' stories or kids' songs that come up, it's usually like really grave situations, like it was the heroes of a past time, like there was something very serious at stake, and these are the people that protected each other, and these were the acts of heroism that they did, but they're no longer around.
I also think about how Ring Around the Rosie is about the Black Plague.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, what?
Yeah. Well, and also the idea of I can't recall your face, that's a pretty common thing after people pass away and time passes on. Like this could be, and the please picture me could also be this request to the I can see almost, this is so sad, but I can almost see a child at a gravesite being like, I hope you, like, this is how you can remember me. It's how I remember you, and
something
and
about
wishing I could save you.
Something about peak at 7, right? Like what happened, maybe, if it's the age
This whole
or at 7
situation.
feet.
Exactly. That's
Like I
what
hit
I
my
was
peak
thinking.
at 7 because this all happened. But I mean, if we go with your this person is dead theory, we don't know why. I don't even know that it's important if they died or if there's just not a relationship there.
Yeah.
I think that's what's important, is there's not a relationship there, because this bridge to me expresses a lot of regret for not saving this person. We can be pirates, then
Yeah.
you won't have to cry or hide in the closet. Just like a folk song, our love will be passed on. We'll be able to keep our love and our relationship because I can save you. But I feel like this person didn't get to save this person for whatever
Yes.
reason.
Yeah.
We just don't know why.
And even are there still beautiful things? I'm
Right.
recalling that first paragraph, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like something bad happened. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be death or whatever. Maybe
Right.
they moved away.
Something
Maybe it's just
dark
the regret.
happened.
Maybe it's just the remorse of not being able to save this kid. But just given that we have some themes of anger, crying, hiding,
Yeah.
And there's definitely the sense of, I was too scared to jump in. Okay, so also that line by itself now, as I'm reading it, is I was too scared to jump in.
Mm,
It's over the creek, but it's not necessarily jumping in the creek, right? It's like,
right. Just
I
to
was too
jump into the
scared to jump
situation
into the middle.
potentially.
Yeah.
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 And then it's saying, are there still beautiful things? It definitely feels like that was a dark moment in this person's childhood.
I like that. I'm liking this interpretation that there's some sort of loss. I don't know that it's death, but there's some sort of loss, and there's something that had happened that she was too scared. The scared to jump in ties back to the bridge. Are there still beautiful things? Also ties back to this sense of loss and trying to reclaim this sense of innocence and beauty that she felt at her peak at 7. Whether that's 7 years old, 7 feet, doesn't matter.
Okay, it gets darker.
I was gonna say we have a little bit more to go,
And
but
it
I do
keeps
think
going.
this circular thing of going back to revisit, like I said at the beginning, that more information is going to illuminate a lot. Then we get, please picture me. So again, we're hearkening back to that first line, but then it's, please picture me in the weeds. Before I learned civility, I used to scream ferociously anytime I wanted.
Like the cats.
Yeah, to me is like, I think when I've heard this song, I always thought about it as just nostalgic of childhood. And so scream ferociously anytime I wanted to me is just that feeling of being untamed, or but like
Uninhibited.
uninhibited is the word definitely I'm looking for. And so the idea of just being able to go and be free and just let loose and scream in the context of the chorus and the bridge and everything that we just discussed. Now I'm not so sure if it is quite that free and liberating. I'm now imagining a darker kind of a scream or frustration, maybe, because it's before I learned civility. So it's like today you would have to restrain yourself. If you, like, once you learn civility, you have to hold back and you can't just express your emotions. You have to control and manage.
Also in the weeds, right? When you're in the weeds,
Yeah,
just want
it's
to use
not
that metaphor
pretty.
at work all the time. It means
Yeah,
you're like really caught up in the details or caught up in something. Here, I
But
think it's literal weeds in the
is it literal?
wild.
It might
I
not
think
be.
it
Like, what
could
if
be.
it could be? I mean, that's the first image that I had because I'm
More double
contrasting with the
meaning for you,
trees.
Jen.
Yeah, because initially I'm thinking of picture me in the trees, and so the next nature thing is weeds.
Then gone from the trees up above at a peak to the weeds down below where things are messy.
But now also imagine if you're playing with time of the present day and going back, it's also like, imagine being in the weeds now. Like, what if today you get stuck in the details? Like, what if it is the other meaning? It's like, picture me now, like where I am in my life.
But it's saying
completely
before I
bogged down.
lived civility.
And then you're going back. So it's like, picture me in the weeds. And then before I learned civility, I used to scream ferociously
I
anytime I
see.
wanted.
I see. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, I was reading it as all one sentence of, please picture me in the weeds before I learned civility. So I was in the weeds when I was screaming.
What do the official lyrics say?
You know what? I don't think it goes that far. This image.
What?
It just stops at after it stops after the bridge.
Well, I think the clear takeaway is that there is a before and after. We have whatever the peak was, whether it's like this was a good peak or not, but there was sort of a before time when childhood was good. And now there's the after time where we're questioning if there are even still beautiful things. And I still kind of like the freedom interpretation of, but I'll say loss of innocence. We don't know what happened to her friend, but clearly that experience was that loss of innocence of realizing there's something bad and trying to wrestle with what that means. Perhaps that's the moment that's when she learned civility, when she learned to not interfere or not to make a fuss because she was scared and nervous and wasn't sure what to do with it. And now, but in the past, she would just scream when she wanted anything and she would just express herself. And I do think there's a tinge of regret to this. And perhaps the regret is learning civility. Perhaps the regret is saying, I wish I had screamed ferociously for you, my friend, in order to help you get out of this situation. I think that's an interpretation. I don't know if it's the one I 100% buy, but I think it is an interpretation.
I'm also thinking about the cross my heart won't tell no other. Like, to me, this feels like something where maybe the regret is around not telling, right? Like, we talk about not
Yes.
saving or whatever. And so to contrast that with scream, like, I used to be able to scream and just let it out without thinking about it, and yet could tell no other.
So Taylor, herself did talk about this line in the Long Pond studio sessions. She said, with Seven, the song, I was looking back on it. I've always wondered when I see a kid throwing a massive tantrum in a grocery store. When did she go to grocery stores? Like, part of me is like, man, I feel you. Like, when did I stop doing that when I was upset? When did I stop being so outraged that I would throw myself on the floor and throw cereal at my mom? Obviously, you know, we can't be throwing tantrums all the time, and we learned that's not the right thing to do, but there's something lost there too.
Yeah, and
she
maybe there are
also had,
moments where you should be throwing tantrums and we don't.
she also, there were two, I don't remember variants at all, but there apparently was a collector's edition of folklore called In the Trees, and then another one called In the Weeds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple more new lines. So we go back to the chorus. Sweet tea in the summer, cross my heart, won't tell no other. And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you. Then here's where it changes. Pack your dolls in a sweater. We'll move to India forever. And then pass down like folk songs. Our love lasts so long. So we just get those two new lines at the end.
Okay, the braids earlier and then moving to India forever makes me think it's an Indian friend.
Maybe.
With an angry dad, which, like,
I think this is more than an angry dad if they were crying in a closet.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's not the most unheard of trope.
You're saying it
You're
gently.
speaking, yeah. You're,
Knew quite a few friends with
Mm.
angry dads in haunted houses.
Me too, sadly. Yeah, and it's interesting how sad and depressing the song is, but it's a lighter musically. Great. I love it when we bring up music, but it's not a depressing song. It's only a depressing song lyrically. It's not just a depressing song
Yes.
musically, which
Yeah.
again makes me think that this is kind of a wistful nostalgia memory song versus deep depressing type of song like LOML 10 milliliters.
I also think it could be, though, that like tendency to romanticize your childhood and to say these things that don't sound terrible, and then you reflect on it. I've heard many stories, or people joke about it now because millennials have dark humor, but people joke about, oh, I would tell the story, and then someone would say, hey, that was really bad. And then I realized, oh, that was really bad. What you experience as a child is pretty normalized because you don't know anything else. And then you reflect on it and you're realizing, oh, that wasn't good, or that maybe caused some issues, or I understand the severity of the situation now as an adult. And I think it might be playing with that, where it presents as light and fun.
Yeah.
But then upon reflection, you realize, wait a second.
I definitely see the song a little differently in that I don't necessarily feel like it's the same nostalgia. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Jen, about just like it is an adult lens on a childhood memory, and we're weaving in and out because, I mean, this to me is, I see why you mentioned this in the Unreliable narrator completely, Jody. Like, it makes so much sense, but it really is changing perspective as the story is being told, as if the speaker is almost trying to figure it out maybe and make sense of it as they're talking, right?
And I think that gets to my purpose, which is, I think that when we think of nostalgic childhood memories, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, I think of myself as having a really happy childhood. Like, I look back and I'm like, it was really happy. But really, there's a lot of ambivalence. There are moments in childhood that are kind of dark, that are different. And I think this purpose of this song is to get at that more ambivalent nostalgia, or that nuanced nostalgia that mixed in with these positive memories of childhood and these places where we felt safe and at our peak and at home are also these core memories that are potentially really dark or were traumatic moments for us that then shaped our future, who we become. So again, I'm making broad generalizations. Everybody has different experiences, but I think in this song, and the purpose of this song is to weave together the nuances of positive, happy childhood memories and experiences with the more complicated, more nuanced experiences, the very adult experiences that we have as children, but we don't experience them as adults. We experience them as children. So instead of an abusive father, you see your house is haunted and I want to run away and let's pack your dolls in a sweater. So I think it's looking at the adult perspective of nuanced childhood experiences and sharing them from that child's perspective but also reflecting on the positive and the negative of it all. So it's a very heavy, nuanced, complicated song disguised as a very simple song in a simple time.
I think I'm a yes and, so I can go next. I 100% agree with all of that. I think I have also noticed the before and after, that the idea that something happens and you lose a sense of who you were and you start to become an adult. And then years later, as an adult, you look back and you wonder, why did that happen? And how can I find a new balance? I will share a brief example. When I was going through therapy couple years ago, I remember mentioning I just feel like I'm always responsible. I felt like I had a really boring life, that I wasn't really that interesting. This podcast is by far the most interesting thing I do, and that's because of you two. And my therapist asked me, she was like, "Well, what's the first time you can remember being asked to be responsible for someone else?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a great question." And then I remembered when I was in kindergarten, my teacher had me teach other students how to do math because I got the concept so quickly that I then started tutoring my classmates,
My God.
which I'm sure from my
So
teacher's
funny.
perspective was just like trying to get help. But I was like, oh, I was 6 years old and I was in charge of teaching other 6-year-olds. And that's not as extreme as this song, but she was like, okay, well, before that, what were you like? Or, and I then immediately was like, oh, and then there was this time, and then there was this time, and there were so many times of, well, I was asked, what she phrased it as was the parentification of, I was asked to be almost like a parent or a mentor to my peers way earlier than I should have been. And so then I started feeling like I was responsible for
Right.
everyone, even though I'm absolutely not. Unpacking that is a lot of other stuff. But this song did give me a sense of that, of a lot of our conversation was, well, what are the parts of you as a kid that you want to still hold on to? Like the wonder, the excitement, the enthusiasm for life, and not being responsible for everyone around you. How can you go back and find some of those and re-embrace them as an adult, while acknowledging, hey, some things happened that weren't nearly as bad as the song. Like nothing about that was horrible, but it did start to
They
form me.
impact
So how
you.
as an
Yeah.
adult, as an adult, how do you take a little bit of the good and a little bit of the bad and try to find that balance? And I think this song is doing that, which is part of why the time is so complex. Because as an adult, when you start going through that process, you're like, oh, and I should have done this, but I can't do that. But how do I do that? And like it's a lot. It's a long process, and by no means is it ever really over, I don't think. Or if it is, someone tell me, that'd be great to know. But it reminds me of that, of starting to unpack those moments as a child where things fundamentally started changing for you, and what do you do with that information now that you have it?
Yeah. Like that interpretation. Think that my purpose is maybe somewhere in between both of yours, of course. I think we're all going kind of in the same direction. I do think that maybe it's like a processing song, to your point, Jen, of like, as I'm talking through, like we're trying to figure it out as we go. I do think that maybe, okay, so like in the context of the broader album of folklore, I'm thinking about the way that this becomes lore, or like even throughout the song, it says that our love will be passed down like folk songs. The love lasts so long. And so one thing that I think that I'm thinking about with this song is that it is almost acknowledging the fact that kids do experience the same kind of serious gravity type moments as adults, and they can rise to be that hero, and they can still have the same kind of reactions to some degree that we have as adults, but maybe even more raw and unfiltered because they're children. But to what you were saying earlier, Jody, it just like it's expressed differently. And so kids talk about it in simpler terms, or they make it I mean, to some degree, in such a dark situation, there's such a level of optimism, right? Like we can just get away, we can just do this. And so there's a different way about which they maybe deal with it. But to me, this is like a example how like kids are not just totally innocent. They're not just unaware. They do notice things, and they do feel the feelings, and maybe have they just see it through that lens of story tale, perhaps. And that's the thing that is different from adults.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of, so my grandmother was killed in a car accident when I was 9, and I was old enough to know what that meant in process. My brother was 6, and I remember he was drawing, and I remember being so upset that he was drawing, because I was like, "Why aren't you upset?" Like, he didn't cry, or I don't remember him crying. I don't want to speak for him, but what I remember was him drawing. And obviously now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was his way of processing. Like, that's how he processed what was happening. And I think that's a really good point, Monty, that children are aware. They just process and interpret differently than adults because they have a different set of tools to use because they have different set of experiences.
Yeah. And that desire to want to do something is still
Right.
there. Those feelings of shame and failure are still there. Like so many of the adult emotions are still there. It's just, it manifests in different ways because kids live in somewhat of a different world. Yeah.
They're in a different place developmentally.
Yeah. But especially like there's just so much like I was like, I feel like I could even keep going through this, but like there's so many like little lines in the way that it ties together. Like picture me in the trees. I was actually thinking of the quote, see the sky for the trees. And like if you have this one view, like we use that phrase to say like let's not lose sight of the big picture. And then you have another line that echoes that, and it's in the weeds. And especially she released an album that was like the trees and then the weeds. Like I'm thinking about like how that contrasts. And so it's like let's think about it really specifically, and then like let's look at big picture. And so to me, like looking at big picture, just even in context of all the folklores and the albums, it's like these epic songs that talk about important tales or stories that can be passed down generation to generation. So to me, this is like a serious event that happened, something that was life-changing and dark to some degree, but seen through the eyes of a kid and therefore processed through the eyes of a kid. And you're still kind of learning what it was and trying to make sense for it, but also just like really validating that kids do see it all and they do feel it all just slightly differently.
The only other thing I wanted to mention that has nothing to do with purpose, but I also feel like folk songs and folk stories are often kind of self-referential. A lot of the great epics in these folk stories will start with, oh, we have put down into words the tale of this person so that you will remember their story forever. And she does that here too. And I just thought that was kind of fun. And just like a folk song, our love will be passed on, which is some lyrics she wrote in a song on an album called Folklore. So there is this self-referential of, I am writing down the story, so this will be passed on like folk songs. Also, this is a folk song. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Double meaning.
Yeah. Like kind of literal at the same time.
Well, that was a heavy one.
It was. It's beautiful, though.
Yeah, definitely beautiful.
To the point that you just said, Jen, Lyric Genius has a note about an interview that Aaron Dessner gave to Vulture, and he said that the song has one of the most important lines on the record, and just like a folk song, our love will be passed on. That's what this album's doing. So it is totally self-referential, but I wanted to call out that he straight up said that in an interview.
I love Lyric Genius. Will they sponsor us? Well, that's all we have for you on Deep Sigh episode of AP Taylor Swift. Join us next week as we deep dive and overanalyze more Taylor Swift songs. That's all we have for you today on AP Taylor Swift. Be sure to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on your social channel of choice at AP Taylor Swift to stay up to date. And join us next time as we overanalyze and deep dive into the next Taylor Swift song on AP Taylor Swift.